Good morning, BookTube. Bill Ruttenberg here with the Ruttenberg Library, and I come to you this morning with another Ruttenberg's Reviews. Recently, my daughter was supposed to go to a speech contest yesterday morning, and she was sick. So I got the whole morning off to read. I didn't have to go to the speech contest, and I say didn't have to. I wanted to go, but she was sick, so I was at home, and I got quite a bit of reading time in the morning, and I was able to get through an entire book in a morning, which doesn't happen very often with me. But that book was Faith and Betrayal, A Pioneer Woman's Passage in the American West by Sally Denton. And I wanted to come to you this morning and tell you a little bit about this book. This book was I felt a really good book. It is let me give you some of the particulars. It is an Alfred A. Knopf book out of New York, 2005. And it's basically a biography on Jean Rio. Jean Rio was a pioneer woman who had lived in England. She was widowed and was of pretty good means. Like she had some money left to her, but they were going through in England some of the issues of religious persecution and kind of stuff like that. Her family throughout the early history of her family had battled the religious persecution and stuff, and she came across a Mormon missionary who had come to England and was, spreading the word of the Mormon Church, and she kind of got tied into that, and she brought her and her family over to the United States, and they were on that westward trek on the Mormon Trail, and they went to Salt Lake City. And so this is basically the story the story of her going west. And I thought it was a very interesting story. The author is the great-great-granddaughter of Jean Rio. And let's see, I wanted to read this to you because it'll set up my whole rating for the book. She basically says, and I don't want to read the whole thing, but just the last 3 sentences. For so many years, Jean Rio was deprived her voice. Then the church distorted it. My goal has been to restore it. And so that's really the author's whole goal for this book is, women of the early American history, they didn't get a voice, and that's not right. Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of the stories from women of the 16, 17, 1800s. And Jean Rio kept a diary, and her great-great-granddaughter, her whole objective was to give Jean Rio a voice. And so she takes us along on that journey based on the diary that her great-great-grandmother kept. She goes on that journey from England and everything that was going on. She takes us across the Atlantic and tells us about that experience. I don't know about you guys out there, but I don't even want to imagine losing my kids. That is a horrific, or what I imagine to be a horrific experience. It always bothers me when if there's something that puts them in danger, and kind of causes my wife and I to freak out a little bit. And matter of fact, my wife's kind of freaking out right now about the new virus that's going around, and worried about her 2-year-old and everything. And so I can't imagine going through what they went through before all of the medicine that we've got now. And she loses a child out on the Atlantic and has to bury the child at sea. So they come across the Atlantic, they go around Florida to New Orleans. She experiences some of her first experiences in America she deals with the slavery that she sees in New Orleans, and of course she's got that European mindset, and she doesn't quite understand it because Europe basically had done away with all of its slavery in years earlier, and so she doesn't understand that. She takes a boat up the Mississippi and stays in St. Louis, and then eventually goes north on the Mississippi a little further, and then comes across the ever-famous Mormon Trail right across Iowa. And I found that very interesting because she goes, detail blow by blow of what happens along the way on the trail and just the hardships of that. And I thought that was kind of an amazing journey that they took, where they, at some points earlier in the Mormon migration where people were really kind of mean to them, and she goes into some detail on that. But when Jean Rio is on the trail, she had fairly good experiences with the people across Iowa. They were fairly nice to them, and they weren't persecuting them or anything like that. But what was really cool for me is they were naming off some of the places that they stopped. And one of those places, if I've got this right, because it took me a little longer to read it because I had my phone out and I was Googling, different places she was talking about. And one of those towns is about 40 minutes northeast of where I am right now. And so that was kind of cool, gave a little bit of a personal touch to it. Because where the Mormon Trail ran is right through our area. And she talks about the eventual getting to Council Bluffs and then the jump off point, and she gives some more detail about as they head west and as things get drier and things got a little bit rougher. And that wasn't just for the Mormons, that was for anybody going west. That was just part of the experience. And once she gets to Salt Lake City, she talks about how as a woman of property, all eyes were immediately on her. She had money, she had some belongings with her, and she gets to keep those for a while, and eventually loses them, and then ends up having to live in poverty, which to Jean Rio just doesn't make a lot of sense. And the author has to do some piecemeal work because Jean Rio's diary goes silent for a period of years, and a large part of that, the guess is that didn't want to speak out against church, and so there's a break with the church, and she ends up migrating to California, and it tells that story. And I just thought this was a really good book. Again, not very big. It was like 180 pages of actual reading, so that might be part of the reason I got done so quick yesterday morning. But I thought it was a good book. I'm not going to say it's like an outstanding piece of literature. It's not going to win a Pulitzer, most definitely, but it was a really good book, and I think she did her job in telling Jean Rio's story. Which was her main goal. She wanted to give her a voice, and she was an amazing woman who got into basically being a midwife, and along the trail as they were heading west, she learned a lot of primitive medicines, and so she becomes a little bit of the local doctor and is able to apply those skills, and it gives her just a little bit of independence when she's in Salt Lake City. And anyway, gives her a sense of identity. And I just thought Sally Denton did a very good job with this book. I struggle to rate it just because I know it's not like a Pulitzer Prize winning book. I know that. So it probably ends up at about a 3.5, but just because I enjoyed it, and I think the author accomplished her goal of giving Jean Rio a voice, I would actually push my rating up to a 4, just because I personally liked it. I thought it was good. I'm really into family history and genealogy, and so anyway, I would recommend anybody to read. If you got a couple hours in the afternoon, go ahead and read Faith and Betrayal by Sally Denton. I think she does a really good job telling the story of Jean Rio, her great-great-grandmother. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope this helps you, gives you an idea of maybe something to read if you're ever interested on Americans going west and the Mormon Church. And I learned a lot on that, by the way. Forgot to mention that. There was a lot of stuff I didn't know anything before. And so anyway, I'd recommend reading that. This has been Ruttenberg's Reviews. Hope this has been helpful. Have a great day.